Chapter 15, Peace and War. Boston Herald, March 1898. Other ways than by war. In reply to your question, should difficulties between the United States and Spain be settled peacefully by statesmanship and diplomacy in a way honorable and satisfactory to both nations? I will say I can see no other way of settling difficulties between individuals and nations than by means of their wholesome tribunals, equitable laws, and sound, well-kept treaties. A bullet in a man's heart never settles the question of his life. The mental animus goes on, and urges that the answer to the sublime question as to man's life shall come from God, and that its adjustment shall be according to His laws. The characters and lives of men determine the peace, prosperity, and life of nations. Killing men is not consonant with the higher law whereby wrong and injustice are righted and exterminated. Whatever weighs in the eternal scale of equity and mercy tips the beam on the right side, where the immortal words and deeds of men alone can settle all questions amicably and satisfactorily. But if our nation's rights or honor were seized, every citizen would be a soldier, and woman would be armed with power girt for the hour. To coincide with God's government is the proper incentive to the action of all nations. If His purpose for peace is to be subserved by the battle's plan, or by the intervention of the United States, so that the Cubans may learn to make war no more, this means and end will be accomplished. The government of divine love is supreme. Love rules the universe, and its edict hath gone forth, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," and "Love thy neighbor as thyself." Let us have the molecule of faith that removes mountains, faith armed with the understanding of love, as in divine science, where right reigneth. The revered President and Congress of our favored land are in God's hands. Boston Globe, December 1904. How strife may be stilled. Follow that which is good. A Japanese may believe in a heaven for him who dies in defense of his country, but the steadying, elevating power of civilization destroys such illusions and should overcome evil with good. Nothing is gained by fighting, but much is lost. Peace is the promise and reward of rightness. Governments have no right to engraft into civilization the burlesque of uncivil economics. War is in itself an evil, barbarous, devilish. Victory in error is defeat in truth. War is not in the domain of good. War weakens power and must finally fall, pierced by its own sword. The principle of all power is God, and God is love. Whatever brings into human thought or action an element opposed to love is never requisite, never a necessity, and is not sanctioned by the law of God, the law of love. The founder of Christianity said, "My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you." Christian Science reinforces Christ's sayings and doings. The principle of Christian Science demonstrates peace. Christianity is the chain of scientific being, reappearing in all ages, maintaining its obvious correspondence with the Scriptures, and uniting all periods in the design of God. The first commandment in the Hebrew Decalogue, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," obeyed, is sufficient to still all strife. God is the divine mind. Hence the sequence. Had all peoples one mind, peace would reign. God is Father, infinite, and this great truth, when understood in its divine metaphysics, will establish the brotherhood of man, end wars, and demonstrate on earth peace, goodwill toward men. Christian Science Sentinel, June 17, 1905. The Prayer for Peace. Dearly beloved, I request that every member of the Mother Church of Christ Scientist in Boston pray each day for the amicable settlement of the war between Russia and Japan, and pray that God bless that great nation and those islands of the sea with peace and prosperity. Mary Baker Eddy, Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire, June 13, 1905. Reverend Mary Baker Eddy, Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire, beloved leader, we acknowledge with rejoicing the receipt of your message, which again gives assurance of your watchful care and guidance in our behalf, and of your loving solicitude for the welfare of the nations and the peaceful tranquility of the race. We rejoice also in this new reminder from you that all the things which make for the establishment of a universal, loving brotherhood on earth may be accomplished through the righteous prayer which availeth much. William B. Johnson, Clerk, Boston, Massachusetts, June 13, 1905. Christian Science Sentinel, July 1, 1905. Quote, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. End quote. I now request that the members of my church cease special prayer for the peace of nations, and cease in full faith that God does not hear our prayers only because of oft speaking, but that he will bless all the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand, nor say unto him, What doest thou? Out of his allness he must bless all with his own truth and love. Mary Baker Eddy, Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire, June 27, 1905. Christian Science Sentinel, July 22, 1905. An explanation. In no way nor manner did I request my church to cease praying for the peace of nations, but simply to pause in special prayer for peace. And why this asking? Because a spiritual foresight of the nation's drama presented itself and awakened a wiser want. even to know how to pray other than the daily prayer of my church. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. I cited as our present need faith in God's disposal of events. Faith full-fledged, soaring to the Horeb height, brings blessings infinite. And the spirit of this orison is the fruit of rightness. On earth peace, goodwill toward men. On this basis, the brotherhood of all peoples is established, namely, one God, one mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. The basis on which and by which the infinite God good, the Father-Mother love, is ours, and we are his in divine science. Boston Globe, August 1905. Practice the Golden Rule. Telegram. Official announcement of peace between Russia and Japan seems to offer an appropriate occasion for the expression of congratulations and views by representative persons. Will you do us the kindness to wire a sentiment on some phase of the subject, on the ending of the war, the effect on the two parties to the Treaty of Portsmouth, the influence which President Roosevelt has exerted for peace, or the advancement of the cause of arbitration? Mrs. Eddy's reply. To the editor of the Globe, war will end when nations are ripe for progress. The Treaty of Portsmouth is not an executive power, although its purpose is goodwill towards men. The government of a nation is its peacemaker or breaker. I believe strictly in the Monroe Doctrine, in our Constitution, and in the laws of God. While I admire the faith and friendship of our chief executive in and for all nations, my hope must still rest in God and the scriptural injunction, "Look unto me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth." The Duma recently adopted in Russia is no uncertain ray of dawn. Through the wholesome chastisements of love, nations are helped onward towards justice, righteousness, and peace, which are the landmarks of prosperity. In order to apprehend more, we must practice what we already know of the Golden Rule, which is to all mankind a light emitting light. Mary Baker Eddy. Mrs. Eddy and the Peace Movement. Mr. Hayne Davis, American Secretary, International Conciliation Committee, 542 Fifth Avenue, New York City. Dear Mr. Davis, deeply do I thank you for the interest you manifest in the success of the Association for International Conciliation. It is of paramount importance to every son and daughter of all nations under the sunlight of the law and gospel. May God guide and prosper ever this good endeavor. Most truly yours, Mary Baker Eddy. Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire, April 3, 1907. Mrs. Eddy's acknowledgment of appointment as fondateur of the Association for International Conciliation. First Church of Christ Scientist, New York City, Mr. John D. Higgins, Clerk. My beloved brethren, Your appointment of me as fondateur of the Association for International Conciliation is most gracious. To aid in this holy purpose is the leading impetus of my life. Many years have I prayed and labored for the consummation of on-earth peace, goodwill toward men. May the fruits of said grand association, pregnant with peace, find their birthright in divine science. Right thoughts and deeds are the sovereign remedies for all earth's woe. Sin is its own enemy. Right has its recompense, even though it be betrayed. Wrong may be a man's highest idea of right, until his grasp of goodness grows stronger. It is always safe to be just. When pride, self, and human reason reign, injustice is rampant. Individuals, as nations, unite harmoniously on the basis of justice, and this is accomplished when self is lost in love, or God's own plan of salvation. To do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly is the standard of Christian science. Human law is right only as it patterns the divine. Consolation and peace are based on the enlightened sense of God's government. Lured by fame, pride, or gold, success is dangerous. But the choice of folly never fastens on the good or the great. Because of my rediscovery of Christian Science and honest efforts, however meager, to help human purpose and peoples, you may have accorded me more than is deserved, but 'tis sweet to be remembered. Lovingly yours, Mary Baker Eddy. Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire, April 22, 1907. Concord, New Hampshire Daily Patriot. A correction. Dear Editor, in the issue of your good paper, The Patriot, May 21, when referring to the memorial service of the E. Sturtevant Post held in my church building, it read, quote, "It is said to be the first time in the history of the church in this country that such an event has occurred." End quote. In your next issue, please correct this mistake. Since my residence in Concord, 1889, the aforesaid memorial service has been held annually in some church in Concord, New Hampshire. When the veterans indicated their desire to assemble in my church building, I consented thereto, only as other churches had done. But here let me say that I am absolutely and religiously opposed to war, whereas I do believe implicitly in the full efficacy of divine love to conciliate by arbitration all quarrels between nations and peoples. Mary Baker Eddy, Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire, May 28, 1907. To a Student. Dear Student, please accept my thanks for your kind invitation on behalf of the Civic League of San Francisco to attend the Industrial Peace Conference, and accept my hearty congratulations. I cannot spare the time requisite to meet with you, but I rejoice with you in all your wise endeavors for industrial, civic, and national peace. Whatever adorns Christianity crowns the great purposes of life and demonstrates the science of being. Bloodshed, war, and oppression belong to the darker ages and shall be relegated to oblivion. It is a matter for rejoicing that the best, bravest, most cultured men and women of this period unite with us in the grand object embodied in the Association for International Conciliation. In Revelation 2:26, St. John says, "And he that overcometh, and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations." In the words of St. Paul, I repeat, quote, "And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogues, nor in the city. Neither can they prove the things whereof they now accuse me. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets." End quote. Most sincerely yours, Mary Baker Eddy, Pleasant View, Concord, New Hampshire. The Christian Science Journal, May 1908. War. For many years I have prayed daily that there be no more war, no more barbarous slaughtering of our fellow beings, prayed that all the peoples on earth and the islands of the sea have one God, one mind, love God supremely, and love their neighbor as themselves. National disagreements can be and should be arbitrated wisely, fairly, and fully settled. It is unquestionable, however, that at this hour the armament of navies is necessary for the purpose of preventing war and preserving peace among nations.